This is How to Achieve a Creative Flow State with Gene Kropper. And this research has basically come from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I've seen a couple of his TED Talk videos. He grew up during World War II, and he was studying and just intrigued why some people couldn't stand the chaos and the stress of war, and how when they lost their livelihoods and their homes, they fell apart and became a shell, and how other people could sustain themselves during that time and sustain a sense of self and a sense of happiness or meaning in the world. And he and people he's worked with have done about 8,000 interviews about flow and what flow meant to them. And he came up with the term creative flow because that was the term that the people he interviewed used. And I was also interested because in the arts, there's so many people who hang on to professions that aren't necessarily terribly respected in society, aren't necessarily paid very well. But I realized that those are often professions that regularly put you into flow, which is a very captivating state. It's almost a drug-induced high. And I think many of the people in advertising, in the arts, in music, in athletics, so many of those fields get this heightened sense of being. And I think that's one of the reasons that those professions are so captivating. And so that was my personal curiosity. And also thinking back to World War II, it also intrigues me that it's something that has fed people to allow them to get through trauma, to allow them to hold on to a sense of self, a sense of meaning, a sense of joy in life in very difficult times. And I thought both of those are quite captivating reasons to understand more what flow is and what the conditions are that get us there, and what the specific elements are in the different stages, to know what that experience is, to try to take it apart so that we could recreate it a bit more often. Okay. And yeah, and flow state occurs when you're focusing absolutely completely on a very well-defined complex task. Time disappears and a sense of self disappears. And there's a sense of everything just working, and insight comes, ideas come, solutions come. And so it's a very specific state, both of mind and body. But I'll just go into all that. And yeah, and it particularly intrigued me because of both my own experience as an artist and also having come through trauma. It intrigued me that this was something that helped people. Being able to go into flow helped people stay sane and survive. Okay, I will just dive into sharing my screen. Okay, and can you see a graphic about the flow state?
Perfect.
Okay, to start off with some misconceptions. The flow state isn't what happens anytime you're concentrating and just feel good. There's a little more specific nature to it than that. And the flow state, the misconceptions are that it's just a mental process. That's not true. There are very specific physical changes in the body that change at each stage. Also, the misconception is that only artists or creative people can get into the flow state. That's not true. Engineers, architects, athletes, technicians, surgeons, mechanics, musicians, people playing chess, anyone can get into a flow state. So it's something that's accessible to more people. And then looking at the big picture and what the flow state is and what it isn't. Flow state isn't just about feeling good. And during the flow state, the brain releases 5 powerful feel-good chemicals. So that's particularly why so many people want to go there, because it is a lovely high. And I thought that was interesting because I didn't know what the physical conditions are that make it such a good, pleasant place to live. And when in the flow state, time disappears and your recognition of patterns increases. I had a friend who worked for the military and looked at satellite pictures, and she would interpret satellite pictures. And I was thinking, that would be something that you'd want to be in a flow state for. Okay, this flow state, it has some very specific stages. It has 4 very specific stages, and I'll go through each of those just to understand what they are And so you can have a sense of where you are within this. And I found that very helpful too, because the first stage is the struggle stage, and that's very uncomfortable. So it's useful to know that's part of the whole and the part of getting there. And in stage 4, the real learning comes together in the brain. And I'll go into more detail on that in a minute. And thriving in creativity and a tranquil mind aren't just exclusive for gifted individuals. So anyone can get into a flow state. The 4 stages are struggle stage, release stage, flow stage, and recovery stage. I'll just go into those bit by bit. Okay, this is an interesting diagram that's about your own sense of the experience. And there are 2 parts to this. One is the skill level involved in the task and the level of challenge. If somebody is a surgeon or a rock climber or a chess player, they have a certain skill level, and that's the bottom arrow going towards the right. And the higher the skill level, the more you can manage a process. And then the other vector, the vertical one, is the level of challenge of whatever the task you're doing. Are you a surgeon or a rock climber or a composer or an engineer? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And you don't get into flow when you're doing something really simple. It needs to be something that really engages your skill and requires quite intense concentration. So if it's a low level of challenge and a low skill level, you're going to be down in apathy and boredom. You can see the blue areas. If there's a bit higher level of challenge, but not much skill involved, you can still be involved in worry and anxiety. Your brain's still churning around. But if you don't have the skill to solve the problem, if I was trying to play chess, that is a high level of challenge, or I was trying to be a surgeon, I would be very worried and very stressed because I don't have the skills to do that. The level of challenge would be too high in balance with my skill level. If I was doing something that I'm very good at, but the challenge was low, then I would feel quite relaxed and in control. Flow, which is the yellow area, is a balance between when all those come together. And when you're doing something that you're good at and is just the right level of challenge, that's control. So you're doing something, you know what you're doing, and it's all just working fine. You're in your comfort zone. That's where you're in control. If you're upping the level of challenge, you're getting into flow where you're going, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. And then your whole brain is engaged because you can't think about anything else. Arousal is not a sexual reference, but about being very alert, very attentive, and wow, yes, I've got to focus on this. I've got to pay attention to solve this, where the level of challenge is high. That certainly happens when we're in a crisis and you're just like, whoa, okay, I got to pay attention here to solve this. So flow is when those all balance. And in one of the things Michaeli mentioned was that the brain can only process so much at one time. When you are dealing with a very difficult problem and a high level of skill, you tend to forget whether you're hungry, you forget the weather, you forget what time of day, because your brain can only process so much. And if you're focusing on a difficult problem, then your brain can't focus on anything else. The other things disappear. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to show you a quick breathing techniques so that we can clear our heads as well to focus on taking in what we're doing here. I'm just going to, and this is just a 5-minute breathing technique that called 5-finger breathing. And when we're doing that, I'll just show you this. I'm going to, actually, I'll stop sharing for a moment. We're just going to breathe in when we run a finger up, breathe out when we run a finger down, and just go up over the fingers as a breathing technique to quiet down the brain so it's easy to take in as much of this as we can. Okay. All right, here, I'll just make sure I've got my hand here. So we're just breathing in, and just, you can do this with me. And by doing it together, it means you're anchoring both a tactile and a physical activity, and you're coordinating your breathing so it all works together. So breathing in and breathing out. And we'll do this 15 times. We'll do 3 hands worth. Breathing in and breathing out. And if you can breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth and breathe in through your nose. Breathe out. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through your mouth. Okay, we'll just do that 2 more times. Breathe in and breathe out. 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 Okay, we'll do one more quick round and then we'll go back to our information. Okay, breathing in and breathing out. In and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. And last one, breathing in and breathing out. Good, good. Okay, and that's also a really good exercise if you're wanting to calm down or just clear your head, or you just need to concentrate on something. You're trying to go into a good meeting or an intense meeting, and you need to focus quite intensely. All right, the first of the 4 stages is called the struggle stage. And this is uncomfortable. Yeah, you're focusing on learning a challenge that's a new skill, a process, or solving a problem. It's often a high risk situation. If you're playing chess, it's not the end of the world, but if you're in chess, then you care about that. It seems to be high risk. Certainly, if you're a surgeon, if you're a rock climber, there's a very defined problem that you're trying to solve. Okay. And your experience in this is you don't know what you're doing yet. The task isn't impossible, yet it seems overwhelming. There are many details to pay attention to, or you could fail. You're out of your comfort zone, rather out of control, and you're fully attentive because, wow, this is a lot. Your brain is emitting beta waves, so you're both stressed and excited. Your body is producing cortisol and adrenaline, and you're experiencing high stress and anxiety, not knowing how this will turn out. But I think this is also part of the excitement and challenge that working with creative problems brings. There's the, oh, I don't know if it'll work this time. I've done this before, but I don't know if this time it's going to work. And you have a strong sense of awareness of being present in your body. So being physically present. The next stage is the release stage. The release stage happens when you step back from the situation emotionally, so your ego isn't so involved. You're still focused completely on what you're doing, but you start observing yourself doing the skill, noticing the steps, but being somewhat detached. This helps you solve it because your ego isn't as involved. So you're allowing yourself to go through this and you're not quite as anxious. Your stress levels begin to drop and the nitric oxide washes away the stress chemicals. So it's a little easier to be in this. You're just diving in and working on it. The next is the flow stage. Flow stage is when the steps start coming together. You're feeling like you're in the zone, you're in the Zen state, sort of an alternative reality. And your experience of this is you feel you can succeed. You've got very specific steps, very specific skills you're using, and you're doing those. You're in the thick of it. Yeah, there's a sense of clarity that comes. You're mastering the skill. you don't have to think so hard. And at this point, your tools, your muscle memory is kicking in if you're a surgeon or an athlete or doing something that's physical, and your skills are coming together. The process begins to make sense, and there can be a sense of ecstasy or exhilaration or a serenity in that you're doing what you're meant to be doing. There's a real intensity there. Your awareness becomes very heightened, and there's a timelessness. So you can spend quite a bit of time. If you've got a very complex problem, you might be doing 5 hours of surgery or writing a poem or composing something. And you're afterwards, you forget how long that time is. Also, there's a sense that you forget yourself, that you're part of something larger. And this really helps if you're in a work situation, if you're in a team situation where you're all contributing to make something happen. And if people feel like they are part of something bigger and that their contribution matters, then that helps diving into the flow state. At this point, your brain is producing theta and gamma waves. Theta is the meditation state. It's quite a specific thing that's going on in your brain. You have flashes of insight and you're processing new data very quickly. One thing that's interesting about gamma is it allows different parts of the brain to work together so that all the different facts or the different bits of information come together in ways that they don't normally. So that increases pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is more than just a design thing, but it's making sense of things across different information sources. And your brain produces the neurochemicals of dopamine, epinephrine, and this just gives a real high. So that's the part that everybody enjoys. And with the body, dopamine produces excitement and the curiosity to explore the process. So instead of being dominated by fear or anxiety, curiosity fires up. So you're enjoying solving the problem rather than being in the fear of not being able to. And also increased muscle firing and timing so that if you're an athlete and you've trained for years, your muscles are in tune and suddenly you feel like you're just flowing along and your skills are all coming together. Norepinephrine speeds up the heart rate. It increases your attention and narrows the focus on your one activity. Certainly, part of flow is that you're in a defined task and you're not dealing with anything else. You're not being interrupted by emails. You're not being interrupted by someone walking in the room. You're not getting phone calls to interrupt it, but you're just focusing on the one activity, and that significantly makes it easier to get into flow. Endorphins relieve pain and induce pleasure. That's certainly relevant for athletes, but also others who are at something for a long haul. That if you're trying to compose a piece of music or build a bridge, that it's very easy for you to forget that you're hungry or forget a backache while you're in the middle of working on something. Anandamide elevates moods to bliss, it inhibits fear, and it washes away fear from memory. Your sense of worrying or having experienced worry at the beginning of the process dissipates. It's easier to keep going. Okay, in recovery, which is the last stage, and it's quite important to know that this is part of the flow experience. Recovery stage becomes during sleep or during rest afterwards. You might be in meditation, you might be in sleep. This is really when it comes together in the brain, so it is very necessary to rest afterwards. This is a satisfying end to your journey from struggle to mastery, and all the steps, the tools have come together. When working a team, this is when you have a sense of connectedness and acceptance that you've all accomplished something and you're all together in this. I certainly remember that from working in advertising, where sometimes we'd work all night, maybe once a month, when we had a new campaign to work on, and we'd be exhausted, but there would be that lovely sense of, wow, we did it, and that sense of teamwork that helps you come together. Your brain slows to delta waves. The new skills become a cohesive whole that are repeatable, that make sense and are integrated with what you already know. Sleep is very important because it allows your brain to file away new information such that you can retrieve it And the biggest job of memory is actually to figure out what to forget, because we get bombarded with huge amount of information every day. And we actually need to sift through that and figure out all the things we don't need to remember and just remember the things that are relevant. So in sleep, we're basically taking all the stuff that we've achieved during that day or exposed to that day, taking it to the filing cabinet and filing it away in our brains in ways that we can access it next time. So that recovery stage is crucial, because then it means we can do this again. Now, in thinking about this, to me, the question is, how can I use this? What in this can I use to help myself or a team that I work with achieve flow more often? The first part is carving out time free of outside interruptions and to be able to ignore other concerns. That's difficult in life, to be able to know your kids are looked after, to know someone's going to answer the front door, know somebody else is going to check emails, someone else is going to deal with crises that need answering, and that you can have some uninterrupted time where you can do the task that you need to do. And being able to build that into a workplace or a team situation is important. And that's why often retreats work well or conferences work well, because you've left your ordinary life behind and you have a set block of time to learn or to do whatever that task. So yeah, focusing your attention on that particular task and turning off other devices. Also, it's important to have one or two very limited and specific objectives. You're not doing everything. You're trying to solve a very specific problem, win a chess game, or do a particular surgery, create a piece of artwork, run 800 meters. It's very specific what you're trying to do. And having that clearly defined helps. It also is important to be able to see steps in that process so that you have a sense of being able to celebrate individual achievements within that. If you're a surgeon, you tied off that artery or something, and or chess, you won that move. There's a sense of progression and a feedback from what you are doing in the moment. And that's quite helpful. So feedback in a workplace is also important, that you know you're doing what is mattering, so that managers can say, oh, yes, that's a good idea. That's going to work. Please go ahead with that. So the goals can be challenging, but not impossible to accomplish. And failure does mean that there are potential negative consequences. So there has to be a buy-in to the goals. Also, it helps to be present in your body, certainly to start off with, and to have a sense of full body awareness. And that's why I did the breath work, because breath work can bring you back into the present. So doing a meditation or a simple breath work can help being present. And that means more of you, more of your brain is involved in the problem to solve it. So a rich environment is also one of the elements. So that means that there might be, in a work situation, there might be other people with expertise around you that you can call on. If you're an artist, it means you've got all the paints or the tools around you that you can access to create what you want to create. If you're an engineer, you've got the materials, you've got the tools, you've got the software, you've got the equipment. So the rich environment means that you've got what you need to accomplish what you want to do. Also, that there's complexity, there's some unpredictability, and that makes it exciting as well as a challenge, a mental challenge. And success, yeah, needs to be measured by incremental improvement. So you have a sense of it, things happening when you're in flow that are making the success happen. Yeah, and some people thrive working on a few projects simultaneously. And if they hit a block in one, they shift to the next. And a lot of creative people do this. You might be writing a play, but you're not sure what the next thing is. So then you go out and go to the gym. You take a walk. You might do something else for a little while and then come back to it. So it allows your brain to process things in the background in your subconscious and you might do something else that you're good at to get that sense of competence or that reassurance. And flow comes after mastering a skill. This is, I suppose, the tricky part. You have to be good at something to go into flow. There must be something that you've had to learn to enjoy that level of satisfaction with whatever skill you're working with. And that can be anything. You can be a motor mechanic working on an engine, and yeah, or a surgeon, or chess, dance, athletics, composer, engineer, rock climber. Yeah, many things, but it's something that you've needed to learn. And now you're putting all those skills together to achieve something. Yeah, and pulling all that together is what is getting you into the flow state. We've gone through the 4 stages, and then I just wanted to talk about, yeah, there's all the ways that you can, yeah, support that in a work situation. And with these, there was a couple sources. Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now is one of the books that's relevant to this. And also there's a few TED Talks and other YouTube videos by Mihaly, who talks about this. And yeah, it was very interesting to listen to him and how he came to understand flow. And I think what fascinated him too was all these people from so many different fields use the same kind of language. There was 8,000 interviews, and they were all talking about that same sense of exhilaration, and that they had done some measurements on the brain and to understand what was actually going on that contributed to this experience. And also, I think the other key part was that he was saying when people had learned how to get into flow for whatever their field was, being able to do that was something that gave them resilience to face turmoil in their lives. That if they knew that they could do something where they felt that competence and that sense of satisfaction in solving a problem and a pulling together of their skills, then that was enough of a high that allowed them to endure difficult times. And I thought that was quite a fascinating thing to realize, because the whole reason he had studied flow was because he was a child in World War II, saying, how is it that some people are finding the ability to get through trauma and the loss of so much, or the so much change, and others can't? And he found that basically it was that they were able to dive into some skill or some challenge, or the working towards the solution of some challenge that gave them that high that allowed them to face whatever it was that was going on. I guess knowing that they could get into that state and have that high, that sense of satisfaction, was what got them through. That made sense to me. And I just thought of all the poorly paid creative fields where people stay in those fields despite perhaps a lack of respect or a lack of money, and thinking, why do they do that? And going, okay, if they can consistently put themselves in flow, then they're getting that wonderful high and that sense of creating something new that's never existed before. That made a lot of sense to me. I thought, yeah, I understand that. And it's very captivating to go there.
Jean, as you're talking, I keep thinking back to coming home one afternoon and Kartik was sitting at the dining table, and so Kartik is my son, who Jean knows quite well. And he was never a very studious person. He didn't like school. He felt like a square peg in a round hole. But he did jewelry design at TAFE. And I came home and he was sitting at the dining table, and I spoke to him and there was no response. And I spoke to him and there was no response. And I had to literally get down in front of his face and say, Kartik, I'm home. And he's, oh, like he completely was just completely unaware of anything else around him. And when I had a look, he was doing technical drawings, which were part of his jewelry design course. And I was like, wow. I said, I've never seen you so focused before. Like, I said, do you like drawing? And he said, I do. And he said, and when I draw, all the noise in my head stops. And I felt like that was probably flow. He was probably in flow.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, thank you. I actually, that makes me think of my son when I just separated from my husband. He was drinking heavily and volatile, and it was a very frightening time. My son and I moved to a hotel, and my mother bought him a very complex piece of Lego. It was a huge helicopter, and he spent, as an 8-year-old, 6 hours assembling it sequentially and just worked right through it. And I think that was one of the things that saved him, where
Mm.
he forgot the world and just focused on that. And at the time, it was like, wow, are you still going? Are you still going? And the ability to forget the world and to go into that state, separated from the world and separated from fear, anxiety, day-to-day concerns, can recharge you and give you a sense of achievement and a high that when you come back into the world, you can say, okay, now I can deal with it. Now I can go on. And yeah, I think that's a really fascinating concept. How do we give this to ourselves or people around us? And how do we create that in the workplace so that we can periodically, can we give people time, uninterrupted time, where it's okay, this is your 2 days where you get to work on that problem and we will solve the other problems. And yeah, that I think looking at the specific conditions of flow means you can make it more easy for people to go into it. And that there are specific things you can do in the workplace to help that happen and support this team of 4 people. We're going to let them just do that for the next 2 days. And that can allow them to solve a problem and say, okay, you don't have to answer emails. We won't make you come to that meeting. We will feed you and bring lunch in. You don't have to go out and order takeaway.
And it's an incredibly positive argument for putting down devices, because in the workplace, I work in a corporate environment, and even in meetings, people still take their phones, they still take their computers. They're only half listening in the meeting while they're answering emails or responding to a message. So I think I'm going to use this moving forward to say, let's put all the devices down, let's be present and really focus, and maybe we can get into some flow.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, because I think sometimes it's good to have different sources of information, but it's also really important to not have that constant interruption, because then the brain is recalibrating every time you change
Yeah.
devices. Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Virginia, do you have any thoughts on Virginia?
There. Okay. Want to learn more. It's great. The idea for you and I know the creative process, and I'm starting to get back into painting. And it's a bit of a struggle at the moment, just trying to get the skill level back up again. But I've had some successes with some of the drawings and things. So yeah, want to learn more. Just, yeah. And as you and I know, any support for mood and all of those things, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's why it piqued my interest.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's fascinating because I was thinking, what is the relationship of flow to stress and being able to deal with stress? And what is the relationship to creativity, doing something that hasn't been done before, solving a problem that hasn't been solved before?
Yeah. And every new artwork is a new problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Annie,
True.
do you want to make any comments?
Good morning, ladies, and thanks for hosting it, John. It's great to see you, and thanks for everything. So, yeah, what I can say is, to my experience in life, it will be very crucial for me as a new entrepreneur. So, I know creative problem solving and maybe some solutions that I can um, implement into the world. So, for the betterment of the problem I want to solve and for benefiting societal members, this will be a really good creative thinking process that I can engage in so that it can assist me with my career in some kind of sense, or even if I want to use that to enhance the quality of activities that I do for my hobbies, that'll be really handy. So it's very life benefiting. So in personal and professional arenas. So thank you for teaching us this. So if I have more questions regarding that, can I ask you on that, like after the session
Sure.
as it
Yep.
comes up and stuff?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome to email me. I can put my email address in chat. Sure. Yep.
Okay, that'll be great. Looking forward to learn more with you for creative flow and
Yeah, and I'd
make
also say do look up Michele on YouTube, and it is good to hear things in his own words. And I find that just hearing even the same information in different voices has things sink in differently. He was saying that in surveying people in the United States, there was 36% of people who said they felt like they had happy lives, and that even though standards of living had increased significantly, that percentage hadn't changed in 40 years. And he was curious about that and saying, okay, what is it that determines happiness? Because that was one of the biggest things that he was wondering about. And saying, okay, you do need a base standard of living to be okay. But after you've got the basics taken care of, then you don't get happier because you've got more money. And it's still that 36%. So he was intrigued with that. And Nancy, do you want to say anything? Do you want to add anything?
I'm anxious to start figuring what it does for me. I mean, starting with this business around the fingers or this way to see if it actually calms my mind, and I can then let other things in, and then I'll work on them. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That's the end of today. And yes, somebody has very kindly typed in the name, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I certainly enjoyed listening to him, and his YouTube videos were delightful. And just hearing someone who had worked on a problem for many years and thought about it a lot, done research, it always intrigues me. And I'll just put my email address in here just so that.
Thanks so much, Jean. I'm certainly going to explore this concept a bit more with my team, I think.
Yeah. And I think it is very interesting, both personal, but also in work situations.
Yeah.
Say, okay, what are the conditions?
Yeah.
And it seems to be, okay, a complex problem, a rich environment, and that you had a sense of incremental achievement as you went, and that there was live feedback during the process. So you weren't in the dark thinking, am I doing all right? Am I getting anywhere? But that you've got management feedback saying, hey, yeah, good, keep going. That all those things add to making this work. And there needs to be some sense of challenge or danger, that like the rock climber, you don't want to make the wrong decision, but also not overwhelming. You have to have the tools and the skills to achieve the goal. It can't be terrifying. That's not going to get you into flow. Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy your search, and I'll talk to you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Jean. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.